Canada says Chinese warplanes harassed its patrol aircraft in North Korean sanctions mission. Later, China accuses Canada of provocative acts in the skies after a military jet criticism. This is the Great White North Report. I'm in love with the system. Never going home. I'm in love. So last Thursday, a Canadian CP-140 Aurora surveillance plane was in the international skies, looking towards North Korea to help track ships carrying illegal or sanctioned goods from abroad to North Korea. This is part of our efforts to put pressure on their nuclear program and to get North Korea to stop it, which they'll never do. North Korea will continue with their nuclear program, and they will, if they can achieve greater results, they'll start exporting it to other countries that are not friendly to anyone else, like Iran. They don't care as long as they make money. So the United Nations, and Russia and China were on board with this thing, or they would have vetoed it. They agreed to sanctioning North Korea. They signed on. They're perfectly okay with surveillance aircraft tracking North Korean ships. The problem is a lot of Chinese ships are involved in helping North Korea evade sanctions. Something which the Communist Party of China vehemently denies, but we all know it's true. It's one of those things. But lately, it's been getting worse and worse in that Chinese warplanes are harassing aircraft patrols. So last Thursday, China's military accused Chinese warplanes of harassing its patrol aircraft as they monitor North Korean sanction evasions, sometimes forcing Canadian planes to divert from their flight paths. Which means that probably Chinese ships were unloading cargoes onto North Korean ships as part of the evasions. They're in international waters, so between April 26th and May 26th, aircraft of the PLA Air Force approached the Royal Canadian Air Force CP-140 Aurora long-range patrol aircraft. The PLA Air Force aircraft did not adhere to international air safety norms, and these interactions are unprofessional and put the safety of our RCA personnel at risk. Remember, these CP-140 Auroras are ancient. They're 1980s aircraft, and they're long due for a replacement, and they're basically unarmed. And to send fighter jets against unarmed aircraft, yeah, it shows a lot of balls on the part of the Chinese Air Force. Yeah, I hope you guys are proud of yourself for taking on an unarmed aircraft. The Canadian aircraft was so arrested they had to change their flight path to avoid a potential collision with the intercepting aircraft. Well, I think our aircrew need to give their balls a tug and say, hey, let's just do it. Let's see what happens. Just keep on our flight path. If they collide with us, it's their fault, but yeah, we're going to lose our lives, which kind of sucks that way. But again, it will be the Chinese who create the incident. So Beijing had yet to comment on the allegations, which they did today, or yesterday. And the Canadian military says this is nothing new. It's increasing in frequency. And this is a United Nations approved operation to implement sanctions on North Korea. So they signed off on it. But then they're reneging on it. It's part of Operation Neon, which sees military ships, aircraft, and personnel deployed to identify suspected sanctions evasions at sea, including ship-to-ship transfers of fuel and other supplies banned by the United Nations Security Council resolutions. China's on board with this, but guess what? North Korea gets a lot of its fuel and supplies from China and Russia. It's nothing new. China, which says it has enforced the UNCS sanctions, joined Russia last week in vetoing a U.S.-led proposal for new sanctions over its increasing missile tests. The only way to stop North Korea is to actually put nuclear weapons in South Korea. Put nuclear weapons on South Korea again to counter North Korean nuclear weapons, and China will get really anxious. And then tell the Chinese basically, we will take our nuclear missiles out of South Korea if you stop the North Korean missile program completely. It'll shake them, especially if you have them pointed towards China. Now that might be seen as a provocation, but what can you do? Nothing's going to work. Sanctions aren't going to help anything. It's only going to hurt the North Korean common people more than anything else. So now China accuses Canada of provocative acts in skies after military jet criticism. So they defended their military policy, saying they acted properly in protecting its sovereignty. Yeah, right, over international waters. Right, okay. So according to their defense ministry, Wu Qian, China took reasonable, forceful, and professional measures in response to Canada's provocative acts of an unfriendly and unprofessional operations. Right, it's an unarmed aircraft. Unarmed. Canada stepped up close reconnaissance of China under the pretext of implementing UN sanctions. Canada would bear responsibility for any serious consequence from what we call risky and provocative acts. Right, we're gonna start a war with China. We're gonna do reconnaissance of China for what? They say China always conducts operations based on international law and practice in a safe, professional manner. Bullshit. But they would not allow any country to violate its sovereignty in the name of freedom of navigation. Right. The Australians are also critical of maneuvers. This isn't the first time a U.S. surveillance plane and a Chinese Air Force jet also collided, resulting in the death of a Chinese pilot and a 10-day detention of U.S. aircrew by China. It was back in 2001. I remember that incident. And it's the same thing. The Chinese fighter jet intercepts Australian plane. This time they released flares, cut in front of the Australian surveillance plane, then released chaff, anti-radar device, which includes a small piece of aluminum, which injured the Australian plane's engine. Because of Beijing claims, even though it's not recognized by international law, most of the South China Sea and also the Yellow Sea. Yeah, an aircraft that was made in the 1980s. It's a propeller plane. It's a prop plane. It can carry weapons. Air-to-surface rods can be fitted after a minor retrofit, and it can carry torpedoes and conventional bombs. They can carry these things, but on this training exercise, they don't. These kind of training exercises, they do not carry this stuff. And these are probably from our 407 Long Range Squadron, Patrol Squadron out of Comox. We have 3 of these there. Most of them are actually in Greenwood, Nova Scotia. Or we have 4 in the 404 and the 405. There's 15 over there. We only have 3 in the West Coast. I think we should change that. We should put more on the West Coast. But at the same time, it's also time to upgrade. Now, flying unarmed military patrol craft over those type of skies, it's probably not the smartest thing, and it might actually be better if we actually had air cover. They wouldn't be able to get so close. Or air support. So maybe it's time to bring back the Bonnie. I don't know if anyone remembers the Bonnie Venture. My great uncle served. He spent some time aboard it when he was with the Canadian Air Force on training exercises. He also served on the P-3C Orions back in the 60s before they were replaced by the Auroras. So maybe it is time to bring back the Bonnie Venture or something like it. That way our patrol aircraft do have air support when they're flying these type of missions. Because China is more and more becoming aggressive, and it's time to start treating them like the enemy they are, the Chinese Communist Party. Just like the Russians in Ukraine, that they are no longer our friends. The Cold War is back, people, whether you like it or not. But other than that, what can we do? What other reasonable thing can we do? We've already tried reasonable things. Now it's time to try step up things. Give our balls a tug and step up. I'm just one guy. Any Canadians out there, let me know what you guys think. What should we do? Do we stay completely out of the Chinese waters? Let them have their little way? Do we continue sending these unarmed, unescorted aircraft to patrol a United Nations mandate and hope that nothing else happens? Or do we up the ante a little and send our patrol aircraft escorted and try the same maneuvers that the Chinese aircraft are doing? Let me know in the comments section. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.